Hey, welcome back. Welcome back. Last one of the broadcast today. We've got the two Johns from the Foundry here. We have John Wood-Elton. We have John Stark. They're going to be talking about the Foundry Research, what's been going on back at HQ. We also have this amazing thing here. I'm not sure whether you can see it, maybe somewhere. We'll be talking about that a little bit later as well. Any questions, any comments for the boys? Hashtag TFCgraph. Over to you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Bex. Hello, everyone. How you doing? Enjoying your SIGGRAPH? Good. Yes, yes. Hey. Okay, so this is the part of the day, the slot that we talk about what's going on Foundry Research back at HQ in London. Those of you who don't know, we have a dedicated research team, and they work on a lot of the clever stuff that's in our high-end compositing software, Nuke, amongst other things. So stuff like the camera tracker, the motion vectors for doing like slowing down and speeding up stuff in Kronos, planar tracking, all these sort of clever math-related things the research team comes up with and rolls it into products like Nuke. Also stereo as well, like the Ocular toolset. So what we're going to talk about today is some of the work that we've been doing in the research department. In particular, it's to do with vectors, which is moving, seeing where pixels go in images. And in particular, there's two applications of that we're going to look at. The first one is paint. I'm very excited to talk about this kind of unveiling, really, that actually this paint workflow will be in an upcoming version of Nuke soon. And it's called Smart Paint. Well, that's kind of our code name for it. And it's basically being able to use these vectors to accelerate paint workflows. And John's going to show some more details on that. So there's kind of two halves to this as well. There's a research half, which is this clever acceleration of paint workflow. And also the core engineering team has been done a lot of work on the paint tool itself to make it less heavy, re-engineer it, allow more strokes, make it faster, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a kind of a two-pronged approach to making the paint tool better. And the other thing John's going to talk about is where we're going with our VR experimental toolkit. I say experimental because we want to make sure that everybody knows that this is not something we've released yet. It's something more further in the future. But if you just saw Jeff's demo from New Deal, you would have seen that he actually used some of these tools in his workflow already. We unveiled some of these VR tools for stitching 360 and content at NAB. Since then, we've evolved the tools slightly, done some work, put it out to a few companies for an alpha test, and they've given us back feedback. So John's going to show an update to the tools, incorporating some of that feedback and showing a little bit more of a refined process. Isn't that right, John?
That's good, yeah.
So I don't know why I'm actually here, because all I'm doing is an intro. All of the really cool stuff is what John's going to do. It's called the John and John Show, but really it's just the John Show. So over to Dr. John Stark, who's going to show you the really cool stuff.
All right, thanks very much, John. So yeah, as John says, this slot is really a sneak peek at some of the more experimental tools that we're working on in research. And actually, the research team is there at the back. Say hello, guys. So blame them. So there's a couple of things I'm going to tell you about. Firstly, what we're doing with our motion estimation technology and how we're trying to use it to make paint workflows faster. And then, as John said, I'm going to give you a quick update on what we're doing with our experimental VR tools. And the interesting link there is how we're using our motion estimation tech to take out some of the stitching artifacts when you're creating 360 content for VR. And I'll give you a little bit of a demo about how you can do paint workflows for 360 as well. So a bit about paints, motion, normal camera images, 360 camera images. It's all a bit of a mix. So let's start with paint. So last year, we did an update to our motion estimation technology. So motion estimation is all about understanding the pixel motion frame to frame inside a shot. So what you're looking at here on the left-hand side is a motion blur applied to the shot on the right-hand side. So we did an update to the motion blur tool, the vector generator tool, and also our award-winning Kronos retimer inside Nuke 9. We put a lot of effort into getting accurate motion vectors and also a lot of effort into the picture building to remove artifacts. So you've got a lot cleaner results out of the box. A lot less fixing needs to be done when you use these tools now. So remember, that's all about frame-to-frame motion of pixels everywhere inside a shot. And technically, what we get excited about is the algorithms. And what you really want is perfectly stable, accurate, clean motion vectors. And what you're seeing down here, it doesn't really tell you a lot, but it's a nice coloration of the frame-to-frame motion vectors that we calculate. So it's kind of psychedelic. I really wanted to show it. But what you're looking for here is nice, clean, separated regions of motion. If you ever looked at motion vectors inside Nuke, you might have seen them boiling away. We're trying to get it down to very clean motion vectors. So what we've been doing with that motion technology is moving it from looking at frame to frame to see if we can look at frame 1 to frame 5, frame 1 to frame 10, to see if we can pull out long-term stable motion at every single pixel inside a shot. So I'm going to try and illustrate that next. So what we've done here is we've dropped down some track markers on the first frame of a shot, and then we're driving those markers just using our motion estimation technology. So we haven't used the Nuke tracker for any of these points. We've just dropped them down and driven them from that new kind of smart motion vectors that we're calculating. And what you want to watch out for here, if it starts, is that these things lock down to the motion of the shirt. So technically, this is kind of exciting because it's a bit of a challenging shot. That shirt is quite homogeneous. There's not a lot of information to lock down onto. If you were going to track this by hand with a Nuke tracker, you'd want to lay those tracker points on nice, clean corner regions. But if you can do this from motion vectors, you can actually go and drop down your track points anywhere you want inside a shot. So this is a really nice kind of internal test. You know, how well do these motion vectors hold up over time in shots now? And we want to see how we can use it to kind of take out some of the painstaking work that you have to do in Nuke. So what we've done here is we've dropped down a bit of dirt on the shirt on frame 1, and then we're just tracking that in for the remaining 80 frames that we've got inside that shot. So what you want to really look out for here is the zoom in, and you just want to check that the motion of the dirt really does follow the complex folds and motion that you actually have in that shot. So if you were doing this by hand, you'd have to use a grid warp, you'd have to lay down a load of trackers across the shirt. To drive it, you'd have to do a lot of manual tweaking to kind of eyeball the lock on top of the surface. But now, because you have all of the motion vectors, you can get that kind of automatically. So that's a nice result. Got another example here. So on this face shot, we're going to drop down a tattoo on one side and some blood on the other. So inside this shot, there's not a great deal of motion, but what you want to look out for is the subtle nuances on the motion of the kind of almost at the pore level on the skin. Because we're all kind of very familiar at looking at faces, and any sort of subtle shifting of that comp work is really going to stand out a mile. So we want to make sure that it really does lock down. So hopefully it does. So that's nice. And so they're kind of experimental test results that we've been doing with these motion vectors. And we're working on some experimental tools to kind of give this to the artist. So this is in early days. It's called Smart Paint. I don't know what it'll be called in the future. But what we're doing here is a bit of cleanup work, a bit of beauty work on the face, let's pretend. We're starting on the first frame, cleaning that up, and then we're walking through the frames in the shot to see how well that holds up. So I don't have to paint that every frame anymore. I can just step through, and if it doesn't hold up anymore, I can just insert another key and paint a new fix. So hopefully this will just make it easier to kind of walk through the shot, and you can focus just on the paint work on one frame. So we're kind of excited on how that can speed up workflows inside Nuke. So that's where we're going with our paint tools. And actually, Dan is at the back of the hall. This is Dan's baby. So if you have any questions, then corner him. So the next thing I wanted to tell you about is what we're doing with our VR tools. So we had a kind of early look at those NAB, as John was saying. And there's three things that we're focusing on. There's firstly, how do you bring in live action 360 content captured from a multi-camera rig and stitch that inside Nuke. So you can kind of pipeline the setup of a stitch and get that available to you in comp. And then how you can work with 360 images to do normal post-production work. So all about stitching. The other thing we're looking at is integrating ray trace rendering inside Nuke, so that you can actually render faster, and you can render to 360, and you can add a lens shader so that you can render to stereo 360 as well. So we're working on ray tracing. We're also looking at headset integration so that you can do review processes. So I can check the depth of any content I've inserted. I can look at the color grade that I've done, and also review any work that I've done to fix up a stitch or do any paint corrections on my shot. So we're also looking at headset integration. So I'm not going to talk about those things today. I'm just going to focus on the stitching. On the side of the booth here, we have a headset. We've got the DTK2 hooked up to Nuke Studio for Play Blast and review. So if you want to see that, check it out on the side of the booth. But I wanted to walk you through today what we've done with the stitching pipeline inside Nuke. So we're going to take a look at this shot. So this is courtesy of Visualize, so thanks to the Visualize guys. And this has been shot with a GoPros on a Freedom 360 rig. And a lot of people are shooting 360 content today with GoPros. You know, it's accessible and it's easy to get going. And there's a lot of things you have to do at startup. You've got to deal with your clip organization. You've got to deal with your color match between your cameras. And you've also got to deal with the synchronization of these cameras. So let's just pretend that's all been sorted out and it's fine. And we're going to take a look at one of the experimental tools that we have to kind of ease the setup of a stitch template. So we've called it a camera solver. I have no idea what it'll be called in the future, but that's what it's called today. And we've got our 6 camera images coming in, and I've hooked it up to my camera solver. And what I've done is I've selected a Freedom 360 preset. I've got all my information for that Freedom 360 rig, and I'm going in and I'm doing horizon line correction for this template. So I'm just doing that by hand for the time being. So I've connected my footage, I've selected my preset, I've got my horizon, and now I've got my stitch template ready to go inside Nuke. So there's a few updates here. We had a little bit of preview for this at NAB. We're focusing on making it easier to get this set up inside Nuke. So it's all scriptable inside Python. You can extend it for different rigs. You can get access to all the information. That's all available as metadata downstream. And we've also provided support for different lens models. So we've moved on from fisheyes to add rectilinear lenses. So you can do a rectilinear camera rig. And actually, what we want to do is support any of the camera rigs that people want to shoot with. So maybe in the future, people might want to use high-resolution cameras with rectilinear lenses on the front. They might want to mix that with a set of fisheye lenses around the back. We kind of want to be able to support those different types of rigs. That's the idea here. So this node gets you to your stitch template. Once you've got that information available, you then want to be able to build your 360 image. So with this rig, we're just going to look at a monoscopic 360 stitch. So all my 6 cameras here I'm using in my stitch results. And the demo I've got just going on the screen right here is to show new depth-dependent warping to correct artifacts at the seams between my camera images. So this is where we're going back to our motion estimation technology. So for those that are familiar with shooting for 360, you have rigs that have parallax between the cameras that you shoot with. So that parallax means that content isn't aligned in depth in the overlap regions. So what you see on the back here, I'm going to zoom in. If I zoom in on the grill in a minute, what you'll see is there's kind of a double exposure effect where there is parallax in that overlap region. And what I'm switching on is a warp that analyzes the depth in the shots and realigns those camera images. So that's the depth-dependent warping that we've got in this kind of prototype stitcher node to take out some of the stitching artifacts. And what you're looking at here is the out-of-the-box result. So we've connected the footage, we've got our template, we've corrected the horizon line, and I've put it through the depth-dependent warping. And I wanted to show you what you get out of the box, because it kind of illustrates all of the problems that are still out there for creating 360 content. So with this rig, there's issues with color matching that I will need to resolve between the cameras. So you can see some dark spots, some brighter spots. I need to go in and I need to resolve that. With these cameras, you need to resolve synchronization. Actually, you need perfect synchronization between all cameras. There's rolling shutter issues. So I don't know if you can see on the sky, you can see the sort of jello effect in the alignment between the clouds. And also the fact that no stitching algorithm, automatic stitching algorithm is perfect today, or yet. So I'm just zooming in and showing you the front grille of the car here. And on that front grille, we've got a three-way meeting between three cameras. And we've got a couple of problems there. Firstly, you've got the support rig for the camera in shot. Now, you're always going to have something in shot when you try and shoot 360, trailing wires, a cameraman, some sort of rig. So you're going to need to remove that. Also, the stitching is really good, but it isn't perfect. So the stitching hasn't quite lined up in the overlap region there. So I'm going to need to go in and I'm going to need to fix up that 360 stitch. So one of the things we've done since NAB is just, we've let a few of our clients have access to these tools really early in order to just get a better feel for how they work and the problems they face. So we've taken a look at some of the paint workflows with New Deal. I hope you saw their talk earlier. And we've been working towards how you can do those paint fixes in a 360 environment. And to do that, you need access to all of the stitching information. So inside our stitcher node, what we're outputting is all of the layers for each of those cameras that we use to generate the stitch. We're also outputting the distortion map that lets us sample from the input cameras to our output 360 image. So that gives us two ways of fixing our stitch. We can either work input reference, I can lay down a grid warp and I can distort my cameras, and then sample that back out on my 360, or I can work output reference. I can take those layers and I can go and stitch them by hand. So what we're going to do is use camera 5 layer to fix up the stitch on the front grille of that car. And to do that, what I'm going to do is use a sight tool to break out from my spherical environment a conventional rectilinear camera image. So remember that tools like Nuke and other tools out there are really designed kind of a flat world of normal camera images. That's where all your rotor tools or your spline tools work well. So what we have here is the ability to kind of re-image the world at the point that we want to fix. So I've picked out the front grille of the car. I've gone through a tracker to stabilize that. So I can then go to a clean plate workflow inside a normal camera where all of my tools now work. So here what I'm doing is I'm taking my layer 5 from camera 5. I'm pushing that through a grid warp to line up with my stitch. I'm then doing a little bit of clone work to paint out the grille of the car. And then I'm going to rotate that and project it back onto my spherical environment. So people are using this workflow already today inside Nuke. You know, a lot of this VR content can be created out of the box with Nuke tools. But this just makes it easier and faster. We're using our GPU nodes to accelerate this process. And also, we've added some new filters to reduce the filter hit when you break out and reproject. So this is nice. It makes it just easier to use your conventional workflows for doing paint fixes. So that's kind of it for the VR tools. And we've done some updates to kind of ease the setup and process of working with 360 content inside Nuke. So the next thing I want to tell you about is this exciting thing in front of me, the UFO thing. So it's really great that we've got the Nokia team here today. So the Nokia guys are over here. And this is the new Nokia OZO rig. It's kind of really hot off the press. I think it was announced a couple of weeks ago. And technically what we're really quite excited about with this rig is that you get full stereo capture everywhere in 360. So that you've got full overlap everywhere on your sphere. So it'll be really exciting to see what sort of stereo 360 you can produce in the future using this rig. And it looks kind of cool too. So what you're seeing on the screen here is 8 of the images captured by this rig. And what I'm going to show you is how we can use our tools to support different camera rigs like the OZO from Nokia. And let's say you want to capture with this rig, but you want to deliver to a monoscopic 360 stitch. So what I've done with our experimental tools is I've scripted it to support the camera rig information from the Nokia camera, and then I can pull that through the same stitching pipeline to create a mono 360 output. So here what you see is I've scripted it, I've added all the information, So I now have all that camera rig information available inside Nuke. I can then push that through our stitching pipeline that's doing depth-dependent warping to align the images in the overlap regions. And this is a sneak peek at the kind of results that you can produce. So this is doing all that depth-dependent warping, and it's delivering for a monoscopic 360. So that's great, and it's really nice to Nokia guys to share this footage and this camera with us. So thanks to Nokia. So that's it from me, John.
Oh, that was amazing.
Over to you, John.
Oh, thank you, John.
All
You
right,
were
John.
amazing.
You're
Why are you
amazing.
standing in front of me?
I don't
That
know.
was incredible.
All right.
So I don't really have much to do here, but just to recap. So I just want to recap what we saw from Dr. Stark. We saw the smart paint tools and how amazing it was to kind of get one painted frame and push it through all the other frames using that clever vector technology. So I'm pleased to announce that is something that's coming in the next major version of Nuke, along with a lot of performance updates to the paint tool just to make that paint workflow much, much better. So that's very exciting.
Yeah.
And the second thing we saw was the update to the VR tools since we were at NAB. So you saw the improved support for different types of stitching, the paint and roto, the paint workflow and the tracking workflow improved. And that's been from feedback that we've had with a few people that we've put the alpha tools out to kind of evolve the tool set. So I know that everybody's really excited to get their hands on it, but it is quite a process of everyone learning how to do VR. So we're learning how to do it, customers are learning how to do it, and we're evolving the tool set. So where we're going with this is we will be opening it up to a wider group later in the year. If you're interested in the VR tool set, we now have a landing page on our website, which is up there as well. So like if you're doing any VR content, you're interested in tools, you want to hear more, please register your interest at that address. I just want to point out as well that even though we were showing, doing VR with that tool set, that experimental tool set, you don't need that tool set to do VR content creation with inside Nuke. We have a lot of customers already building and making their own content in Nuke. The whole purpose of the tool set is to accelerate the workflow. I mean, that's what most of our tools are for anyway. And finally, I just want to say thank you very much to Nokia for bringing the rig up here. And the Nokia guys are over there. Put your hands up, Nokia guys. So we're very excited to be working with those guys, as John showed, to pull that stitch together. We're also very much, a camera agnostic. You saw that we were working with a 360 GoPro rig as well, and we're really interested in what Google are doing with Google Jump 2. So that's where we are. We're very agnostic, and we want to work with everyone. That's where we are. So I guess that's about it. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Thank you, Dr. Stark. You were amazing. You and your team.
Go to the back. Go to the back.
There's even been a meme created about you, John.
A
on
meme?
Twitter.
What?
So I'm
I don't know
gonna,
what that means.
Brad, go
got
for
questions?
it.
Oh, no, I was trying to escape.
My first question is, after seeing the presentation before yours, the New Deal Studios and what they're doing with our technology, seeing your presentation, is there anyone even close to what you're doing? Are we just so far ahead?
I think the difference is for us that a lot of people doing post-production work, they're doing it inside Nuke. They need access inside Nuke to be able to use their stitches. So we're providing the ability to get to their 360 con to do those fixes inside Nuke. So we're providing that.
Yeah, the work that your team does, it boggles my mind every time I see it. So once again, I think these guys deserve, because I'll tell you what, they work tirelessly.
They're over there. Hands up.
There they are.
Yes.
Raise your hand, guys. Get some kudos.
There's more of them, but it's just two there.
Another
Not just those guys.
question I had, and I think you sort of intimated the work of using vectors for tracking was super cool. And is the idea that will result in a sort of hybrid workflow where artists can kind of use the best of both? Is that the end game?
That's the idea. So we're kind of experimenting with it at the moment, but you could take a shot, you could analyze it, and you can bake out these vectors that understand long-term motion. You can kind of do that offline, and then you can bring that in, and let's say you could connect that up to RotoPaint. I'm just speculating out loud. Then you can either do your normal paint work, or maybe you could use your vectors that are attached to your paint node. Or maybe there's another node you can work with your normal compositing workflow, but now I just want to connect my vectors, and that allows me to do my paint workflow and step through frames, and I just get that added ability and acceleration in the work that I'm doing. So we want it to be an add-on to help where it can.
Now I have a simple question for you, because you went through a few things, and as a layperson, some of them went a little bit over my head. But there was one part where you were doing a horizon adjustment, and it was kind of changing the warp of the projection there. What exactly were you doing when you did the horizon adjustment? What is that value about?
That's kind of like re-imaging the sphere that you're looking at. So we had, imagine your camera ball attached to the end of the car. Imagine putting your sphere plonked on top of it. If you just project those cameras out on that sphere, they won't have the correct horizon line of the physical world. But imagine rotating that sphere around and adjusting it so that when you image it, the horizon is in the right place. So it's kind of just picking up the sphere and rotating it.
And is that just basically an eyeballing experience, or is that something you can kind of do numeric? I mean,
so
with measurements?
right now it's eyeballing, but you can imagine tools that allow you to add in constraint lines. Maybe I want to go and draw the horizon line and press a button and automatically straighten it. Kind of those are the kind of things we want to get to. We don't have that right now, but we just want to. Yeah, that's the kind of thing we want to add.
And along the same lines, you had the depth toggle adjustment there that was fixing the. What does the depth represent in that case? Is it actual physical depth from the camera?
So it kind of depth is under the hood. What it's actually doing, it's a little bit like our Ocular tool set. So inside Ocular, we deal with 2 camera images, and we can analyze how the images match up with our motion vectors, and then we can smoothly transition between the 2 images. So if you can picture the camera rig, there's parallax between the 2 cameras that are pointing out into space. To generate your stitch, what you need to do is give a smooth transition between the different points of view. So under the hood, we're analyzing kind of the parallax between 2 images in an overlap, and we're doing a smooth transition as if we're warping between depth. It's kind of an implicit process of working out that depth in the shot.
So is that something that when you have a rig like this that actually does have stereo, that you can use some of that stereo information to start to pull in some actual depth?
So it's all speculation. What I'd love to do is try and pull out depth maps in 360 from that camera rig. That would be super exciting.
That'd be super cool. And then I had one more question for you. You had some lens models in there, and I know some camera companies are very protective about their lens models. You guys have some special sauce in your group where you have some grids that you shoot and kind of back it out, or do you just twist arms until they give you the numbers?
Well, there's different ways of getting that lens model in there. It's still early days. We've just adopted one model. You can obviously, it makes sense to adopt different models. We have an import process. If people want to set up their stitch template with all its lens parameters, we want to support that import into Nuke, so that lens parameters are available. There is a lens distortion node in Nuke that will calculate lens parameters for you. It's something that we want to develop.
Excellent. Do we have anything from the interwebs?
I have a question. Will it be possible to output absolute or relative corner pins using those vectors?
Output what? Or output corner pins from?
Yeah, output absolute or relative corner pins using those vectors.
So is this? Oh, this isn't a live question. So one of the things we showed at NAB was using a grid warp on your output layers to manually fix a stitch. So I can only speculate on what would be really nice, which is what this question is asking, is to be able to have the warp that we're automatically calculating output as a grid so that you can manually go and fix it yourself or tweak it, rather than having that automatic process under the hood. So to answer that question, I would say, yes, it would be really nice to have that. But we don't have it yet.
Okay. Anyone here have a question? No?
Everyone's mind is blown.
I know, right? Thank you,
Okay,
boys.
thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to our friends at Nokia too. So, Brad, thank you. Sir, thank you so much for... Did it again. We did it again. So, hello. Hi. So that's all from us from today, broadcasting live from the show floor. Want to do a really special thank you to HP, NVIDIA, and Digital Tutors as well for helping make this possible. Check Twitter now. We'll do the announcement online for the winner, for the graphics card that NVIDIA, the Quadro card that NVIDIA have kindly given us as a competition for this. So that's really, really lovely. Thank you to them again. We will see you soon somewhere. This will be up on a recording online for you. If you do have any questions or comments watching the recording, please use the hashtag TFCgraph, and we will get those messages to all the relevant people. So thank you, goodbye. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you soon somewhere on the planet. Bye-bye. Bye.